I'd like to welcome everyone today to Don't Get Chomped. This is our most popular presentation. This is about common offenses that we encounter in Gainesville and at the University of Florida. A quick disclaimer, U.S. Student Legal Services, we provide this presentation as an educational tool. It is not intended to provide specific legal advice, and we'd like you to contact us, of course, if you have any confidential questions. And the information contained herein is only that of U.S. Student Legal Services and not necessarily reflective of the official policy or position of UF, the UF Board of Trustees, the Board of Governors for the State University System of Florida, the state of Florida. And we want to let you know that our workshop provides a best practices guide based on the research, student cases, input from students, UF offices, and attorneys. And some of it may be emotionally and or intellectually challenging to engage with. And while we took care to present this, we feel in a legally neutral, nonpartisan, non-controversial format, some content and images can be offensive and or upsetting. And if you find the workshop to be upsetting in any way, you can certainly choose to leave it and or not participate. We just ask that all participants help create an atmosphere of mutual respect and sensitivity. We're nonpartisan, non-political, and non-discriminatory, and our students' voices are welcome and heard. I would ask everyone to please hold their comments today until the very end for confidentiality reasons. We have everybody muted, and we're just going to be doing the presentation and workshop first, then we'll go into questions and we'll turn off the recording at that point. Very quickly, U.S. Student Legal Services can help you on all types of cases, from disputes with landlords, criminal charges, traffic tickets, expunsions, sealings, damages to vehicles or personal property. If you buy a car and the car breaks down, automobile, medical insurance claims, and if you use this for nothing else, free notary services here. Everything is actually free. You've paid for our services. Beyond that, we have student involvement opportunities. So if you're a student that's interested in the practice of law, pre-law student, please contact us. And we certainly have plenty of opportunities available. Let's start with our most common charge, underage possession of alcohol. And if you're under the age of 21, just possession, holding it or touching it is enough. The drink does not have to be yours. You may be holding it for a friend, and there's no breathalyzer required. Now, constructive possession means that you don't necessarily have to be holding it. I always use an example with my water bottle here, put it in front of me, and even if I'm not touching it, I can be charged because it's in the vicinity of where I'm around. So be very careful. Marijuana and drug paraphernalia. This is very common cases for us. Usually we encounter them in a vehicle, the residence halls, or woods. And sometimes our students believe that there's an amnesty in the woods around campus and they won't be charged. But in the state of Florida, marijuana is always illegal. And just the odor itself gives the officers probable cause to search. And you got to remember that it's state versus federal, both are illegal here in the state of Florida. And again, the same comment about constructive possession. We've had situations where students have had marijuana on a table or bench, and 4 of them have been charged at a single time because it was in the vicinity of everyone. So be very careful. The reason we want to warn you about this is that you can lose your financial aid and driver's license upon conviction of any possession charge. Other controlled substances that we encounter are cocaine, MDMA, more commonly known as ecstasy, and Adderall. And be aware that possession is a 3rd-degree felony. You can get up to 5 years in prison. Sailor giving it to a friend is a 2nd-degree felony, up to 15 years of incarceration. Sailor giving it on near a school campus, a church, playground, can ultimately net you up to 30 years in prison with a minimum mandatory of 3 years. On DUIs, we have seen the number decline over the years, which I think speaks to the later Gator. We have the SNAP, shuttles, the Uber, Lyft, all these ride-sharing services as well. Hopefully the sober friend, protecting our students and giving that friend a ride home. But be aware still that DUIs are very aggressively pursued, obviously, because of putting others at risk on the road, not only yourself, but others. And it can be a breath test, which is either objective over 0.08 or a field sobriety test, which are subjective. And everyone's seen, I know, on television or YouTube clips where people are doing the various exercises, the walk and turn, we call it, where they have you take approximately 10 steps and then turn around, the finger to nose, where you're required to close your eyes and then touch your fingers to your nose. Pretty easy to do when you're sober. It can be very difficult if you've been drinking. Also, what else have we seen? One-legged stand as well. Remember that if you refuse to take the breath test, you can have a 1-year driver's license suspension. If you blow over 0.08, however, you're going to get an automatic 6-month driver's license suspension. Then upon a conviction of the DUI charge, an additional 6-month suspension. And one point we want to emphasize is that you do not have to actually be driving the automobile, but just actual physical control. We've had cases where a student have been sleeping it off in the car with the keys in the ignition, or close by. These new cars, you don't have to have the keys in the ignition, you just push the start button, but they've been sleeping it off with the air conditioner running and have been charged with DUI, just to let you know. The takeaway on this one that's important, a DUI conviction can cost you about $10,000 in total and can never be expunged for background check purposes. Let's talk about fake IDs here. Our good friend, Mr. McLovin, with his Hawaiian driver's license, is a good example of this, who just turned 40, apparently, if you believe the age on the driver's license, this past summer. It's a misdemeanor to use another's driver's license or ID card. It's a felony if it's a fake ID, okay, if it's not issued by the Department of Motor Vehicles. Both are criminal offenses. And you've got to remember that the officers can run your ID instantly with in-car computers. The other takeaway is that don't use your friends or a fake ID, because these charges can show up on background checks as fraudulent practices, fraudulent impersonation. The reason that's important is if you're going to go into financial services, for example, high finance, stock brokering, anything involving Wall Street, for example, it can be very difficult. You certainly do not want fraud charges coming up on background checks. Open house parties, another common thing that we encounter here. It's a misdemeanor to allow underage drinking at the party. And any tenant that's renting the home present can be charged, okay? I don't think we've seen any tenant charge which has not been there at the time of the party itself. But if there's underage drinkers, you can be charged. So you need to take reasonable steps to prevent underage drinking by checking IDs. Open containers are generally a civil infraction in Gainesville. However, your behavior is very important during a stop, or if you encounter with an alcoholic beverage in your hand, because the officer can still issue you a criminal charge if you're aggressive, hostile, if you try to run or attempt to conceal, or refuse to sign the civil citation. You're not admitting guilt. You're just saying that you acknowledge that you received the receipt itself. And if prior open container within the preceding year or a related criminal offense. So if you've been charged prior to it within the preceding year, you can, or any criminal offense, you can still be charged with a criminal charge on it. You need to be aware also of the party patrol. Gainesville Police Department very actively patrols bars and clubs in Midtown and downtown, the neighborhoods around campuses and apartment complexes, looking for alcohol and other criminal violations. Remains to be seen this particular year, but in past years, we have actually had several hundred students per year charged with fake IDs and MIPs. Game day on campus. The laws, especially alcohol related, are still enforced on campus during game day. And one of the myths that we covered, take a look at the myths around campus, is that you won't be charged for having alcohol on game day on campus. And that's not true. If you're underage now, it can and will be charged, okay, because they are checking IDs. In terms of stadium violations, you have to remember that criminal and non-criminal offenses. So if, for example, you're ejected from the stadium or cited at the stadium, you can lose the loss of your football tickets. And you can lose them up to the entire season, and you may not be able to pick them up until you meet with student conduct and conflict resolution to resolve the matter. Now, in terms of theft charges, we generally encounter it in a misdemeanor. They changed the law just a couple of years ago, and now it's a misdemeanor if the amount that is shoplifted is less than $750. It's a felony if it's over $750. And you can also be charged with a civil theft case. And you will very likely be trespassed from the property. It's generally for a year and extends to the whole mall or shopping center, including the parking lots. And if you go back, that's another crime, trespassing there. So let's talk a little bit about trespassing, break it down. If you're approached either in a store, bar, or nightclub by anyone and they request that you leave, if they ask you to leave, just walk away nicely. Okay, if you want to write a complaint letter following day or come see us about it, you certainly can, but they can require you to leave. Okay, any agent of the owner or owner themselves can ask that you leave the premises. So returning to the location can be a crime, and it can actually extend indefinitely. So certainly contact us, but please try not to put yourself in the situation to begin with. Talk about Gainesville noise violations. Okay, you can be cited if it's 200 feet or more from a property line, if the noise can be heard. And generally this happens, and this is where our students also get in trouble because the officers are called on a noise violation and they hear it from 200 feet away, and then they go to the house and they may see underage drinkers there or start checking IDs. The charge itself, though, for the Gainesville noise violation, civil, not criminal. And for a first offense, believe it or not, this is one of the rare times that you just get a warning with no fine. The second offense, within 365 days, even if it's on the same night, it's a $250 citation, and the fines increase with each successive violation after that. So it can also lead to criminal charges, as we discussed, if the officer observes somebody breaking the law. And the takeaway is that if an officer shows up at your home and they issue a warning to turn down the music, let's tone down the party. Resisting arrest without violence, what we call interfering with the official duties of law enforcement. If you do this, you can actually be charged with a crime. And sometimes we've seen it where it's a student trying to intervene on behalf of their friend, telling the officer, oh, he's a nice guy, or she's very, very nice, officer. Don't, the officer will say, step back, you're not allowed. I need to be able to question, right, your friend. And they'll usually give you a warning. Maybe a couple if you're lucky. However, if you keep intruding with what they're attempting to do at the scene, you can be arrested for the resisting without violence. Leaving the scene of an accident. Okay, we usually see it here at the University of Florida because sometimes the parking spots are very, very tight. And when you're backing up, you may clip the car, unfortunately, next to you or behind you. And if you do that now, you have to attempt to locate the driver of any vehicle or property that you hit, okay? And if you can't locate that person, you've got to leave a note with your name, address, phone number, and registration number of your vehicle. You're also supposed to notify the closest law enforcement, okay, agency on campus. That would be University Police Department. The takeaway from this is failure to leave the information to notify can be a criminal offense. If you hit a car, you need to leave your personal information on it. Traffic tickets. Okay, tips with the big ones that we have are don't argue with the police. Basically, they're issuing the ticket, so they've made their determination based on probable cause that you've committed the offense. At that point, it's up to the court to decide, and we'll talk about the directions that it can go. Also, be aware that you should sign for the ticket if the officer requests you to sign, because again, that can be a criminal charge. You know, you're signing for it, just admitting the receipt of it, not an admission of guilt. And just in regard to traffic tickets, there's three things typically. You can pay for the ticket, but if you do so, you're probably going to end up with points on your license. Second option, of course, is you can fight it in court. The third option, and you can only do this up to 5 times in your life, is to take traffic school. And you can keep the points off your license, still have to pay for the ticket, but you can keep the points off your license and keep your insurance rates lower. Talk about the student conduct code. Okay, any campus violation and charges will be forwarded to the student conduct and conflict resolution. And there can be an administrative hearing or meeting to determine whether the student violated the student conduct code, which is separate of any criminal court proceedings with a lesser burden of proof on it. So be aware that if you get charged criminally, you may be facing also sanctions at the University of Florida. Everything ranging potentially from probation all the way up to expulsion. Cyber solicitation. And the age of consent, of course, varies according to the state. However, it's generally 18 years old or older in the state of Florida. So you need to be aware that it's a felony crime to solicit a minor for sex in any form. And this includes using computers or the phone apps, okay, the various dating apps. It's what we've encountered here. The sanctions can be very severe for this, including imprisonment up to life, depending on the particular circumstances, as well as being designated a sexual offender or sexual predator. There will be no contact with minors potentially in the future, and you can't reside near a school or places where minors congregate, which can be very, very difficult because almost everywhere within city limits is going to be near a school, a church, playground, other areas. Now, you got to also remember for our international students that you're likely to be deported just based on the allegations themselves. There does not have to be a court finding of guilt necessarily in order to deport you. Stalking, cyber stalking, and no means no. And it can exist in various forms. What I like to tell all my students is that if you're online and someone says for you to stop harassing them, stop immediately. You must cease and desist. Also, if somebody tells you that the relationship is over, you need to stop contacting them. And this includes all the various forms: direct contact, the giving of the gifts. That's what we're kind of illustrating here. Emails, text messages, social media. So all these various forms can be considered harassment. A warning, it's also illegal to record sexual encounters without the consent of all parties. UF Police Department jurisdiction. They have jurisdiction within 1,000 feet of university property, and that includes fraternity and sorority houses that may be located not necessarily on the campus itself. Be aware that UF also has property throughout the Gainesville area. So University Police Department arguably has jurisdiction over all the curtilages of this property that's located all over Gainesville. Miranda warning. This is something that we've been asked to talk about, particularly by law enforcement. If they are giving you the Miranda warning, which is, the right to remain silent, anything you say can will be used against you in a court of law. You have the right to talk to a lawyer. If they're reading you this information, stop, do not interrupt. You need to listen and know your rights, okay? Now, they must read you your Miranda rights when you're placed under arrest and detained, meaning you're not free to leave. and they're questioning you about a crime. However, if they're not questioning you about the crime itself, or you're not being detained, then they do not have to give you Miranda rights. Has been a question that has come up. So your rights are remain silent. You don't have to answer or make statements. You do typically have to provide identification, though. You may have to provide a driver's license, okay, as well. Now, if you're arrested, you have the right, of course, not to speak to or incriminate yourself. You could ask to have an attorney present, and you can exercise these rights at any time. One question you may want to ask the officer is, am I being detained? Okay. Law enforcement, of course, understands why you would ask this question, because that determines whether or not you're free to leave. So in Florida, you must give your name if you're asked to identify yourself. Okay. And if law enforcement has a reasonable suspicion that you're involved in a crime, they can ask you for not only your name, but also your identification. And then again, of course, you have the right to remain silent about the facts of the case themselves and to speak to an attorney. Let's talk about it. A lot of students come in our office and say, Lane, the officer did not give me a warning first. Well, they don't have to. Okay. They do not have to give you the second chance necessarily, and certainly it depends on the offense. If it's criminal, the officer can arrest and book you into jail. We generally recommend cooperating as much as reasonably possible to avoid spending the night in jail, and also the mugshots that result. Now, the mugshots, we can probably guarantee that you will not be looking as great as this celebrity here on your mugshot. If you're booked into jail, the mugshot and arrest information are going to show up on the mugshot websites, and it's a difficult and costly process to remove the arrest information. Now, we do have information that can help you. If you do have those mugshots out there, certainly contact us, but be aware that if you can keep and be proactive and not be arrested, not end up with a mugshot, always best. Permanent criminal records. When you're charged with a crime, a criminal record can appear in your background check, even if it's dismissed. So for example, remember what I told you about the fake IDs? They show up as fraud, right? It can be very dangerous and certainly can affect your future career. Open house parties show up as contributing to the delinquency of a minor and allowing a minor alcohol or drugs. So it looks horrible when the background checks are run. If you have any of these, obviously come see us so we can help you with an expungement or sealing. But again, proactively avoiding these charges is always the best thing. We want our students to be good citizens. So here's an example. This is a real case. I just changed the name to John Connor on it, but an actual true case, and was in front of Judge Green and showing up as fraud. And it was using another person's driver's license. So before using your older brother or sister's driver's license or friend's driver's license, be aware of this. And this was completely dismissed, nolle prosequi, meaning dismissal on it, and still showing up on background checks. The other issue is that now the digital images can be seen by the public in the court records. And I have redacted this. Don't worry, it is not a student. We wanted to make sure on that. I've redacted the personal information on it. But if you read the facts of the vehicle, this particular charge, which is available in the public records of the courthouse, and digital images are available online, it said that the defendant was the front passenger of the listed vehicle, exited the vehicle. He was witnessed throwing down a small plastic baggie and then standing on it. So he also looks like he was trying to conceal evidence. Again, this can be a huge red flag for future employment and your career. So certainly come see us. One thing I always want to put in here as well is it's a scam warning for all of our students, because the scammers are very active, and we saw a particular uptick during the COVID pandemic. So we don't want you to lose money. Be aware of emails for job openings with a click here or apply now link. And beware of someone overpaying you with a fake bank check or money order and then asking you to wire them the money. Big red flags here. Emails from someone that you don't know requesting you to send them or wire them cash with a sense of urgency. And if that job offer or scholarship offer or something is just too good to be true, or sweepstakes, very likely is. And if you want us to check, you certainly can. You can also report to a University Police Department about it. Any questions, concerns? We've covered a lot of areas today. Feel free to contact us at UF Student Legal Services, located in room 3500, J. Wainwright Union. We are completely free, again, for our students, and you have 4 free attorneys here. You can go to our website at studentlegalservices.ufl.edu or contact us at 392-LAWS or 392-5297. I'd like to thank everyone for attending today, and we will go to questions in just a minute, and I will stop the recording. Before I do, let me just put this workshop feedback up, and whether or not you're attending personally today or watching us online, we would appreciate a presentation evaluation on it. And you can either click this on with your phone, take a picture of that, and it should open up the website for you, or you can go to this Qualtrics site and enter the information. Again, I appreciate everyone's attendance today, and we will get to those questions. Thank you so much. And at this point, we will stop recording.